right? Because I think you have to look at your career in two different phases. You have your learning phase and your earning phase. Where
Hey guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Truth Talk podcast. Today I'm joined with Joseph. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the people who might not know you.
yeah, sure. I am from Houston and currently am the managing director of a company called Patients VIP that finds patients for clinical trials through digital marketing. And I'm excited to share about how I got to this point on this podcast.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, what exactly was like the first step that you took into like creating a business like that? And like what's first spurred in your mind to create something like that?
You know, maybe it's because I always loved the show Shark Tank growing up, or I
Mhm.
don't know what it is that really inspired it, but I've always thought that entrepreneurs were the coolest people ever. And I always thought, like, I want to be one day. And, I have this note in my notes app called Business Ideas for Summer. And it was because I was trying to think about what's a cool business that I could start during the summertime in high school. And looking back, I a little bit regret that I never did take the opportunity back, sophomore or junior year of high school. Let's focus on maybe my ACTs and whatever else. But then I also recently looked back and some of the ideas were just so dumb. You know?
Uh,
Uh,
Give us like an example of one.
okay, some of them were just pointing out problems. One of them said, like, there's so much waste after movies where there's all this extra popcorn and candy. What do we do about that, you know?
Yeah.
And some of them were a bit more fleshed out that I liked. Like one of them, I was thinking about how fortunately I had an ACT tutor come help me sometimes, and they would teach me all of these tips and tricks, right? And then I thought about basically what's a way that you can deliver all of the benefits of having an ACT tutor, which is somebody to hold you accountable, all of the little tricks, like as an example, because it's a time test, And so one of them being if you see the words always or never in one of the multiple choice answers, it's probably not that answer and you can cross it off to save time, right? So where could you get all of those benefits in an online platform that's affordable to everybody? You know what I mean? So I had thoughts like that, but at that point, I didn't really, I think I was always paralyzed by not knowing where in the world do I start, you know? And
Yeah.
then, and I think that's where most people get trapped today because so many people love the idea of getting a product out there or starting a business. And something that I learned through my own experience is that you don't have to all of a sudden become a business. Everybody I think sees it as I need to now become an LLC and have a team and do all of these things, but you don't need to, overnight just become a business. I think that find something that, well, it depends on what you want to do, right? You can either provide a service or you can invent a new good or widget,
Build a
maybe.
product, right?
Yeah. And so like, well, I'll give a quick anecdote and then I can kind of tie it back to what I'm saying now. When I was in college, I had this amazing speaker come to my marketing class one day, and I loved this marketing class, especially because this teacher was somebody who had really been in the trenches in the business world and done amazing things. And so, they weren't teaching us like, these are the four P's of marketing out of a textbook, right? They were teaching us really cool stuff and brought in amazing speakers who were really doing something special in their field. And so this speaker named Zach comes and he goes, here's how I made this company $500,000 in a week through digital marketing. I was just like, go on. And then, I spoke to him after class, and then fortunately he agreed to, in the end, let me intern with him. And I got so into digital marketing because I thought it was just so cool. And I think looking back, what I thought was so cool about it was in a way how powerful it can be, where it's an amazing form of leverage in terms of for what you put in and what you can possibly get out, right? Like you can reach so many people and make so many people take significant action which is just amazing to me at the
And
time.
with digital marketing, it gets to a point where you almost build like this machine where it's like
Yes.
you put in a number and you almost have like a predictable outcome for what you're going to get out of that number, right? Like you're gonna get X
Yes.
amount of leads or X amount of for you it's clients for these businesses or these in these studies, right? Um
Yeah.
and once you get good at that, it's a lot easier to build like the best word to describe it is a machine, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. We can talk about digital marketing as well. I mean, you are going to hear so much jargon around digital marketing and all of these people who think about, theories that I think people try to throw it out there to make themselves seem smarter. But at the end of the day, yes, there's so much out there, but you can really boil all of it down into just two simple questions, especially in the world of direct response marketing, where you want somebody to take an immediate action as opposed to
Yeah.
branding, which is a longer term play, right? So the two questions are first, how do we get the right people to our website as cost effectively as possible? And that can be, say, traffic from multiple sources. Very cool. And keeping track of how those different sources of traffic might perform. And then the second question is, great, now that we are getting traffic to our website, how do we just maximize the percentage of those people on our website to take the action that we'd like them to, which maybe is signing up for something or buying a product, say, on your Shopify store? And then that's where the whole idea of something called conversion rate optimization comes in. And that's just a fancy way of saying, how do we maximize getting those people to do what we want them to do, right? And so um, maybe that's just something as simple as making it easier to buy your product online, whatever those steps might look like.
Yeah. Yeah, like making the text bigger or whatever it is, right? The copy behind it. There's so many little steps
Yeah.
that you can take. Um, yeah,
Yeah. So, but I was gonna go back to after I learned digital marketing from Zach, I thought it was so cool. I got, would read books the whole summer, teach myself how to build websites because I don't know, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever at the time. But if that's any indication of what my social life was like that summer going into sophomore year of college, and then, I was so excited about it. And so I told my dad about all this cool stuff that I had learned. And then he said, well, maybe you can try to help me find some patients for this study. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll try. Right. And then it ended up being huge, where I generated a pretty robust funnel, and his cost per lead went down by like 420%.
wow.
And and so, and he had tried vendors and all these different, he was hustling, right? And he had tried so many things, but it just wasn't working. And then I was able to help him out and do really well for him. And then from there, he had another friend. My dad's a doctor. And then he had another friend who's a doctor who heard about basically what I had been doing for my dad. And then he was like, "Oh, well, can your son help me?" And my dad was like, "Yeah, I'll ask him." And then my dad mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Okay, I don't know, sure, I'll meet him and see what he's got going on, and see if I can help him." And then I met with that doctor, and then I was able to help him too, not in research, but just for his practice.
Mhm.
And then from there, another one came along from him, and then there's another one from him too. And then I made up a name called JM, Joseph Minkowitz Marketing. And then I just ran this small marketing agency throughout college. And I never thought I'm going to go and start a marketing agency. It kind of just came organically from wanting to help people or do something that can be helpful or good, right? And so I guess that's the whole moral of what I was trying to say earlier is not necessarily having the intent of, okay, I want to start a business. I'm going to keep this list of business ideas for summer, right? And then
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do that. It's figuring out how can I actually find skill sets that I'm interested in, hone in on them, and then just keep talking to people and my ears open and seeing where can I help people and add value. And then starting with something as small as helping one person and then having that become something.
Yeah, and on that, there's like a few things I wanted to touch on because there's a lot
Sure.
of really interesting things that you said there. First thing is like the thing with the ideas, right? Like I know tons of people who have great ideas, who have all these amazing things that they want to do, and it's like, oh, if I knew how to do this, if I knew how to do that, I would have this amazing like product or service or whatever it is, right? But like, I mean, I can ask the people, those same people, like a month later, like, have you done anything? And 95% of the time, they haven't done anything, right? So
Yes.
it's like, it's not necessarily the idea that's like the hard part, right? It's building the skill set to kind of implement. I mean, and then the idea kind of falls in to that skill set, right? Whatever that is that you learn.
Hmm.
But I think the important thing, like through all that, is you learned this skill set of digital marketing, and you were like, "Oh, this is something that I like to do. I'm just gonna learn
Yeah.
it." And then, it kind of fell into place of like, "Oh, wait, I can actually make money doing this. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
this guy wants me to help him. Okay, wait, now I have this network." And it kind of grew from there, right? That's kind of like the sense that I'm getting. Um, and I feel like a lot of people overlook that. Like they see the idea and they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna, build something for this idea. It's like, well, if you build this skill set, there's so many other avenues you can get into, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing is like once you have that one skill that you've kind of like created that skill set, then you're gonna have to start to learn the other skills that come with that, like the leadership, the sales, the all the stuff that does come with building a business, right? Which I'm sure, I mean, I wanted to ask you about that as well. How has your experience been with, you take that digital marketing skill and then eventually you have to, build out this other skill set, which is like leadership, dealing with clients,
Yes.
sales, like how did that all come about?
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see how things progress from there, right? Because what I ended up doing was actually put that little agency, JM Marketing, to bed at the end of college because that same amazing mentor, Zach, reached out and said, "Hey, I'm starting this new really cool company with these other great people where I think it'll be an amazing learning opportunity for you." And the basic business, it's still going. It's a company called Savage Ventures where they will either outright buy or invest a significant stake in, or just do a joint venture with other companies, typically digital media companies, and then use their strong internal team to grow those businesses. And so to me, the opportunity to work on a few companies and see how to grow them was so cool. And so I saw it as an amazing opportunity to level up, and I went for it. Now, all of this sounds kind of flashy and cool maybe, but something that was hard to swallow at the time because, I went to Vanderbilt and the culture there was very heavy on you are successful if you either get a job in something like finance, typically investment banking, or perhaps consulting, where the real goal where you could get clout is if you were making six figures out of college, right? And so I even went through a phase where I was just like, oh God, like that's the only way at the time that I even knew of how to do it, right? And so I was like, maybe I do need to go into one of these fields. And so I was looking into them a lot and I was interviewing very hard for investment banking, but that also never worked out. But just looking back, thank goodness, because this opportunity that I got to go do instead of that with Zach at Savage Ventures, even though what I was making at the time, especially when I started, man,
Yeah,
so little,
yeah,
and I was so below my peers. And I felt a little bit embarrassed as well at first and a little bit upset because I was like, I'm a good guy with a decent skill set and I'm a hard worker. Like, I deserve more. But looking back at it, maybe I didn't deserve more. I don't know. But looking back at it, I realized that it doesn't matter. The difference in me making this much versus this much, realistically, right? At that age, I was what, 22? Now I'm
yeah,
26, but who cares, right? Because I
yeah,
think you have to look at your career in two different phases. You have your learning phase and your earning phase, where doesn't mean don't make money, but that just means the focus is I want to focus on doing things now to set myself up for success later, right? And I would argue I'm still in the learning phase, man. I'm still learning a lot as I go along, and I love it. And I think we're all going to continue to learn. Um, but it's as you go along that you see these larger opportunities and the investment that you've made in yourself. in that learning phase is what will allow you to see those opportunities and see success, I think.
Yeah.
And I forgot one more thing I wanted to touch on. Oh, and then other just little piece of advice. I was upset that I didn't get the opportunity to go to like one of these sexy sounding like corporate rotational programs or whatever. But I think now if I could give any piece of advice to anybody who is graduating college, especially with that same framework in mind of learning versus earning phase, I would go to a small company if you can, because inherently there's less funding, and so there's less human capital around. And so because of that, you're forced to wear a number of hats. And so you're going to work hard, which is great because you want to take on that learning curve while you're younger as well. And you're going to get exposure to all these different things. And you're going to have such an amazing and quick learning period because you're really throwing the deep end because they need hands, right? They need your help. And so it's just such an amazing opportunity to go and learn so much at once and develop a more broad skill stack where you're going to learn a little bit of sales, you're going to learn a little bit of marketing, you're going to learn a little bit of website development, whatever it is, right? And then, or copywriting. And so then you can become this kind of renaissance man. And then you can grow on that foundation as well. As opposed to sometimes in these more corporate positions where you're just like, you are the guy who does this one function, which can be valuable too, but it depends on what you're looking for out of your long-term career.
Yeah, yeah. And just on a sidebar, like I don't understand how people, straight out of college can be getting like six-figure consulting jobs,
Yeah.
having not been in an actual business or, maybe like an internship here or there, but like kind of
Yeah.
that sounds crazy to me. Like I don't think I would want consulting from someone who hasn't like owned a business or run it or anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy
Yeah,
to me.
that's what I think too, man. Because these consultants, they're fresh out of college, and a lot of them will go and support these larger companies, right? And I've met, all these younger guys or people who are seniors in college, usually through my younger sister, and I'm just like, I'll hire you to come and do stuff for me. You don't
Yeah.
know anything yet, you know?
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
like if I was hiring like a consultant, I would look for someone who's been in my industry and is honestly I would just pay someone who's doing better than me and is already running a business, right? Like
yeah,
that's kind of what I would look for in a consultant. But anyway, that's
yeah.
just kind of a sidebar. It's kind of crazy to me
It is
to think
crazy,
about
man.
that.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's cool that you said that. I mean, I guess it's not cool, but it's interesting that you said that in college people had that mindset where it was like these two opportunities and it's just all job focused, right? Because
yeah.
especially, I mean, another thing that we've talked about in private as well is like Vanderbilt wasn't really like the most business oriented school, right?
Mhm.
So like if I guess if you were to go to another school that was, maybe an entrepreneurship school or a business school, that would be like more of a focus, like, oh, start your own business and kind of learn the ropes of how to manage, how to do all these different things, right? Instead of
Yeah,
just get a job in finance, right?
true.
Um, but I mean, do you feel like your experience in college was beneficial to kind of like what you're doing now? Or how do you feel like that college experience led you to where you are now?
Yeah, it's so hard to say to somebody whether or not I think that they should go to college because I'm saying it as somebody who did get a degree,
Yeah.
and it's tough because
Well, in your personal experience, like, do you feel that that was the right move for you? Or, I mean,
yes,
mhm,
I think
yeah.
it was a good move because looking back, the the person who opened my eyes to the world of digital marketing and brought me into that world was Zach, the guest speaker at my class, right?
Hmm.
And then because it's I developed a pretty impressive network of people as well through that experience, right? But then when I think about the things that I actually learned in class, there was a lot of good stuff, but looking back, I don't know how much of it I needed to know. And so I guess that's why when I think about the idea of college more objectively. And I think I told you this before as well, privately, but I recently met somebody who is similar to my age. I think he's about a little less than a year younger than me. And he is so much farther along in the game and similar game, but in the
Mhm.
game than I am, right? And I'm happy
Yeah.
for him. And then he didn't go to college. And so he told me about how, basically he kind of just jumped in. He started out by actually making websites for lawyers. And then he was doing that in his freshman year. And it was just like class was just a waste of time for him. And so it was very hard to convince his parents to let him, right, or to be okay with it, but he dropped out. And so then he had, these other 4 years that he's been in the game, right? And he's doing very well now. So there's that one framework of the opportunity cost of time. And so that's why for me, man, it's still so hard to say because who knows what my opportunities would have been or what my life would have been, you know?
Actually, yeah, obviously. I mean, there's so many variables, but just looking at that, okay, like I did this and I went to this, I mean, it's Vanderbilt, that's a super prestigious school, right? And
Hmm.
and just by saying that name, do you feel that that has helped you? Like you talk to someone, you're like, oh yeah, I went to Vanderbilt. Do you think like that has helped you at all? Just the reputation of it?
I don't usually lead with that.
Well, I
No,
obviously like,
I'm just messing,
but
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. Like that'll give you a little credibility when you speak. But yeah, I guess when you really have to boil it down, for me, the most valuable things that I got from it was I have a lot of fond memories to look back on. It was a great time in my life. I met a lot of amazing people who I'm glad to have in my network now. Like, for example, my pledge brother, Davi. Now he's this amazing entrepreneur who's a close friend of mine. I just saw him in Miami and he's thriving over there. And he is just so talented and come so far. And having met at my school people like him that I learned so much from now as well, I think that's exceedingly valuable. And
Mhm.
then the other really big thing is I'm a strong believer in the fact that you are the company that you keep, or in other words, you're a product of your environment, right? If the whole team that you're, or not team, but the whole group of friends that you're hanging out with is like, no, like screw that. Let's not go out to this social event. Let's just sit here. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Then the group's mentality will be that. And so, kind of an anecdote pointing towards that, because I was a very big believer in that as well in high school. My older sister went to UT Austin, and every
Mhm.
time I was a senior and I would go up for the weekend to Austin to visit her, such a fun time, so cool, and I was always jealous on my mega bus home that everybody else got to stay there when I just got to come for a couple of days. And so I always thought forever, like, absolutely, of course I'm going to UT. But then I toured Vanderbilt and I was so blown away just by the students that we met along the way. In terms of these were people who liked to be social and, have a good time, make friends. And they also were very into whatever kind of things they had going on campus, whether it was clubs, going to the gym, extracurriculars, whatever. And then they were also ambitious. And so I was like, these are, in my eyes, some Renaissance humans. Like I love how they are. And because I thought, I want to be just like them. I want to be like these kids that I'm seeing. So I wanted to place myself in that environment so I could be like them. And I do feel that being around those people with that mentality of setting yourself up for longer term success and taking care of yourself, it shaped me a lot. And I think there was a lot of value in that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. Like talking about like I, when I go to tour schools, because obviously I'm in that process right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really talk to any of the students or really do any like interaction with them. Like, maybe the tour guides or whatever. Sometimes they talk to you a little bit, but
Yeah.
I never really had that interaction. That's interesting that you say like talk to the students because that's like, that's the campus right there, right? Um,
Yeah.
and sort of, with the kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with like the business and everything.
Sure.
So after you got that job after college and it was at that startup and you said you kind of learned a bunch of skills that were pretty helpful.
Yeah.
How did that get into where we are now with like your business?
It's a great question. I did love my time at Savage Ventures, and again, just all around amazing learning experience. But then the real kicker for me was I realized that I just wasn't learning anymore. And
Mm.
so at that point, when I felt like that had stopped, I didn't see any value just staying. And so I had already started kind of like looking into it, and maybe like working on a website and, just all very softly, just kind of looking into it some more. And then it did seem like there was some promise in there. And so I was like, you know what? I was living in Nashville at the time. I was like, you know what? I'm going to move back to Houston. I'm going to go move with my parents and I'm going to go for it. And so I did. And it's funny because at first you really have very little idea what you're doing. But I
Mhm.
will say something that did help me a lot at the time, like because I look at back at how I was versus how things are now, and it's just crazy to think about. But um, I think that just remembering what the client's end goal is, right? And what they need, and then just figuring out how you can get them to where they need to go, which sounds obvious, but you don't need to know everything as long as you're thinking, okay, am I helping them get to where they need to go? And then just figuring out along the way more and more how you can help them. And that's still what I do today, right? Where, I mean, at this point, I kind of just call that branch of my time research and development, where I love learning about new problems that these different research groups have because I love to find out how I can help them with new solutions, right? And then on the flip side, that's a new service that you can offer, which is very cool for a business. But it's also nice because you can delight them and make everybody's lives easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like building out that kind of value stack, right? Because you can start out like, oh, these people need a website, right? Someplace to kind of for them to see the study, right? And then, oh wait, now the website they're not getting any traffic. Like, oh, I can draw traffic now. Oh, the traffic isn't focused. Maybe I can help them focus that traffic and get the people they're really trying to get, right? And then like
Exactly.
it kind of build out that whole thing where at the end of the day you're automating the entire acquisition side of the business, and then you're like, okay, well now I can do this, right? And
Yeah.
that sort of integration of the business, that's really interesting, right? That you're talking about that. And how did you kind of do that? Was that like talking to the clients and just being like, oh, what are some problems you're running into? Or was it like just things that you noticed?
It was more so just through things that I noticed. That's another thing that's actually a great point that you bring up about how you even hear about these problems
Yeah.
is, people love to chat. And I think when you do get later in the game and your time is so scarce, you're like, I don't want to talk to anybody, right? But I think earlier on in the game, talk for as long as you can, or not really, but like, talk a lot to your clients because you can learn so much more about how you can improve, but then just again, they will mention to you things that are going on or steps that you don't see it, but like on their side of the business, right? And then it's like, oh, you guys do that. I didn't quite know that that was a thing. And so then it's like, well, maybe if we set something up like this, then that could help them, and then you can start
Yeah.
experimenting and ideas from there. But that's after you've gotten some kind of foundation going.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
And in terms of like the other aspects of the business, right? So like, going back to like the story, right? So you get out of that job, you start your own little business, and kind of getting back into like working with the same types of businesses that or same types of clinics and people that are doing trials um
Hmm.
from like that time that you had in college, right?
Hmm.
Um and then you have to start building out like this business like all over again from scratch, sort of. How
Hmm.
did that process come about? Was that something that like you had remembered kind of what you were doing and you're like, well, this kind of makes sense, or was it more of a research planned out approach? How did you get your first client? That's kind of that sort of stuff. It's interesting
Uh,
to me.
sure. Yeah. Well, I grew up around research, so I just kind of through osmosis learned a lot about the industry and how everything works. And it's a fascinating business. And there are so many smart people out there that are developing such amazing new therapies and medical devices that are coming to market that it's actually inspiring to see. But outside of that, Um, it's hard. I think that's the hardest thing. The hardest thing is just to make your first dollar, you know? And I think really what pushed me towards it was because the skill set that I had in college when I was doing JM marketing versus what I had after Savage Ventures, like, dude, night and day, right? And so I just knew, okay, well, for that world, I could totally do this, and it would be really strong for serving them. And so I knew that this is something that, in light of all the stuff that I've learned, all the stuff that I've done for these portfolio companies, this is something that like could kick ass for them, you know? And so that's kind of the belief that fueled me. And then would talk to people, hear about what they're doing, and then I was like, well, I think this is, I've done this a little bit before, and I think this would kick ass. Why don't we give it a go just for one study and see how we do? And then you kind of just start from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because when you think of agencies in the digital marketing space, me personally at least, I don't think of research and clinical trials and all that and helping them get new people in, right? Which is it's cool because it's a different take on kind of what everyone else is doing. Because like you think of agency, you think of like roofing, solar.
Yeah.
I mean, what's another stereotypical one? The
Like,
med spas, right? That's
yeah, the
the
med
ones
spas are
that
a big one. Yeah.
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 So it's like you don't think of this, and maybe that's something else that like we can take a lesson from is like it doesn't have to you don't have to just copy someone else. Like think of your own idea and then implement that skill set that we talked about earlier, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and with that, like, do you feel like most of the research stuff and everything just came about just because of your family and like kind of the Vanderbilt experience of like being around people that kind of have that um skill set of like research and uh background in medicine and all that?
I think so. Yeah. And maybe that is kind of the takeaway is whatever you're exposed to, whether because you grew up around it or whatever it may be, see if you can take your skill set to that because you inherently will just know a good amount about it. And then it can be a great starting point. Because something that I've learned, man, is there is so much money out there to be made, and you can do it, you can make money through anything, right? And so it's just finding what you are interested in and perhaps have some knowledge in already and bringing your skills to it. And before that, developing those skill sets that you can bring into it, you know?
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I mean I don't know about you, but like for me personally, like when a lot of people see like my YouTube stuff or my Instagram or a lot of this stuff, I mean I'm kind of a little bit more out there, especially like around like my friend groups and like the school networks that I have. People
Hmm.
always come up to me, or like a lot of people always ask me like, oh, like especially friends, like, oh yeah, I want to do this. How do you do it? How do you do it? Right? And like I spend a lot of time kind of like here's kind of how you do. This is what I did. Like this is, I mean, obviously maybe what I did might not work for you, right? Like what do you have, right?
Yeah.
That you can kind of like for example, a friend of mine really into music, and I was like, well, look into that. Like maybe you can do, some like throwing out ideas because realistically, it doesn't really matter exactly what you do because there's always going to be a market for it for the most part, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of building a skill, and then you can apply that to whatever you actually want to do, right?
So true. Even if
And
it's just like going to local businesses and offering to write jingles for their business. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're going to learn so much through that. Just go and get one person to say yeah, and then you're going to learn about negotiation, contracting, money models, and you'll take away so much from the experience. And if you make $100 or, $1,000, who cares, because you're set up so well now that you're kind of in the game now and you can do something more next time.
Yeah, and the other thing is like a lot of the people that I speak to like that, and the reason I'm saying that is because I think of like my audience as being people like that who like they kind of have like a surface level understanding and they feel like, oh, let me just get right into it, right? And then you're like you start to delve a little bit deeper into it and you're like, hold on, wait, now I have to learn this and then this and then it's like, oh wait, now I have to go talk to this person. Oh, I'm kind of nervous about that, right? Like it's like this whole process and it's like it's really simple. If you just get out
Yeah.
there, try it, right?
Hmm.
And like all this like other stuff of like, oh, we need to learn this and this and this and this and this. Like learn that skill, that one thing, just go try it, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Or you can even just start doing something that is interesting to you. For example, I have my one friend who became very into TikTok and created a very strong personal brand and following from it, right? Just
yeah,
because he actually was driven by what he was doing as well, but he just became a great content creator, you know? And just because he was into it, right? And then from there, now he is selling a coaching program for a lot of money to these. I'm so proud of him. He's selling it to these amazing people who want help building out their personal brand through organic content creation as well, right? So you can always learn something that you think is cool, get into it, and then start, if you make it far along enough and you have enough success, maybe coaching other people and how you can help them too, you know? That's
yeah,
the other thing, man, is I'm hearing more about these different opportunities that some of my friends have seen through these different programs. On the one side, for the creator of the program, amazing money. Like there's this one
mhm,
person who has a program that'll teach you how to make at least $10,000 a month as a TikTok shop affiliate, right?
yeah,
And that guy is making six figures a month, just like crushing it, you know,
yeah,
which is so cool. So there's that side. On the other side, it sounds like, wow, if you do buy that expensive course, you're gonna get so much value from it because, it does actually work for people. And so, that's another great route is finding those people who you can actually trust and have actually done the thing, and then just getting them to teach you through a course. Like that's also a fantastic avenue to get started.
yeah. And I mean, you kind of have to be careful nowadays with like
You have to be careful for sure, man.
with that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. But still, I mean, one thing from like this whole conversation here is like how sometimes we can be a little bit closed-minded to all the different ideas. I still feel like I am, to an extent. Like the
Yeah.
amount of opportunity that there is out there and just completely different fields and completely different things that you can get into. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually amazing to think about because in like just in my world there's so many opportunities and like just think like a step ahead there's just this whole other realm of like industries, businesses, people that you can meet. And like every day, I especially with this podcast, I've been speaking to different people all across the world, and it opens my mind to all the different stuff that they're doing. And
Hmm.
every time that I speak with them, I'm like, wait, hold on, that's an idea. Like that's another thing. Like I'm kind of building up this thing, and now I know all these people in all these different places that I can send a text to and be like, oh, I was curious about this. Like, can you help me with this? Or maybe this time you can help me with that, or whatever it is. It's building up this network, right?
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons I started the podcast, right? Um, but yeah, okay, going back to the conversation that we were having.
And sorry,
What?
Alex, before we leave this topic, though, I just want to say that it's amazing that you're doing that. And again, mentioning how I had no idea where I was going to be now,
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
that's why things are going to keep evolving. And as you get into these different environments, whether it's college or whether it's with new people that you surround yourself with or these guests that you meet on your podcast, I guess the best thing that you can just do is always remain open-minded in terms of where you could go and where you could start next. You don't
Hmm.
have to say like, okay, for the rest of my life, I'm going to do this. Just think like, this sounds interesting. I want to just do this now, yeah, or for now, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So
Yeah. Because I mean, you never know what's gonna come, what opportunities are gonna come by, right?
exactly,
And
exactly.
what people you're gonna meet, what places you're gonna go, and you're gonna talk to there's so many variables that
Yeah,
you don't want to be like, oh well, I'm gonna be doing digital marketing for the rest of my life. Like this is what I love. I only want to do this, right? And then somebody else comes by and tells you like, oh, real estate is an option. You get into that, and it's like what I mean. Like there's so many
yeah.
different things that you can get into that you don't want to close yourself off to those opportunities, right?
Yeah, that's why it's awesome to talk to your friends' parents who are successful. Just be like, like walk me through what happened here. And then you hear all these people who, started out as a lawyer, but there was actually a guy in Houston who did go to law school, but then he had a sports memorabilia company that he was super into. And then he graduated law school, did well on in law school, but then he was just like, I'm just gonna do sports memorabilia. And now he's doing very well for himself. So
Yeah,
you never know, right? So
yeah,
it's also cool to talk to adults like that.
yeah. And I mean another thing is like success is what you make it, right? Like in my eyes, and I've talked to a lot of people about this as well, success is like whatever makes you happy, right?
Yeah,
So like, I mean, if making, whatever amount, the amount of money isn't proportional to success, right? Like for someone making $10,000 a month, that could be successful. They're happy, they're living a great life, right? But for someone
sure.
else, like maybe they want to make $100,000 a month or 200,000, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's whatever you want, right?
Mhm.
And I had this conversation with my uncle, who's owner of a real estate company in New York. And I had this conversation with him, and he was telling me the exact same thing, and that's kind of where I get this whole concept. So if he's
Yeah.
watching this, then that's where I got it from.
You got
Which,
a smart uncle.
yeah. Um, Hopefully I'll have him on the podcast soon enough, but I kind of want to grow it a little bit more before having him on. Um,
That's fair.
but yeah, going back to the conversation, if you were, I guess, maybe like a high school or a college kid, right?
Sure.
And you're looking to start a business, you kind of want to get into it, right? What do you recommend is, I guess, a good step to take
Hmm.
to at least like get your feet wet in this world of business, right? The online world of business.
Sure. I guess there's two different routes that you can go down. And so the one that we've been talking about the most, because it's where I fell into, is providing a service to someone, right? And then so pick up skill, provide it as a service to somebody, right? And just to one person. Don't start a whole business, just help one person, right? That's option A. But then option B is okay, it'd be more challenging to create like a new maybe food product because then you get into manufacturing and that's quite difficult. But another route that a lot of people have ideas about is apps and software ideas, right? And so my friend Nathan and I had a couple ideas that we were excited about, and we were working on them together, but I think ultimately they were just a bit too much of distractions for us, and then the one wasn't technically feasible to pull off anymore, so we abandoned
Yeah.
it. But what I can share with you are, dude, how easy it was, and how anybody, even a schmuck like me, can get something out there. So the well, I can share with you what we were working on if you're interested, but
Sure.
the quick and dirty, it was the working title was birthday texter, and the whole problem is that we always forget people's birthdays unless we check Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea was just that you set it up once where you connect it to your contacts and then you connect it to your Facebook, and then it would cross-reference your phone numbers with your Facebook friends, and then basically download all of their birthdays and then you develop a birthday text template like happy birthday, first name, hope it's a great one. And then when it is someone's birthday, you just get a notification that's like, today is Alex Zach's birthday. Do you want to send him this note? And then it shows you the templatized text. And then you can just say like send, edit, or cancel. That was going to be the MVP.
Yeah.
Uh, but then Facebook closed off their birthdays API, so you can't download that information anymore. So
Oh, yeah.
that was the whole cool part about the plan, and it was gone.
Yeah. Oh,
So if anybody else can figure out how to make it work, go for it. I would love to be a user.
yeah.
And anyways, what we did as step one is first we just made a Word document that's just pretty straightforward, right? Like who, what, when, where, why, right? Or how. And it's just describing who you're trying to provide this for, what's the problem, how are you going to solve it, and describing roughly how it works, just as I did, right? So pretty simple Word document. Anybody can do that. And then it's like, okay, well, roughly like what should it look like, right? And so basically what I did was I took a Word document and I put two blank iPhone screen frames in each one. I just printed out a bunch of those. And then we just kind of talked through it. And then with a pencil, it was not pretty by any means, but I just kind of like drew out what each screen would look like, right? And then if you go on Fiverr or Upwork, you have such amazing access to talent now, and it's quite an expensive labor as well, especially if you go overseas, right?
Mhm.
And so what we basically did was provide so now all you've got right now is your Word document and your drawings. Easy enough, right? Showing what each screen would be as the person goes through. And again, building this out as a minimum viable product just to validate if people like it or not, right? Because otherwise, it's not worth investing more of your time and money into. And so then we gave the drawings in the Word document to a user experience designer, right? And
Mhm.
then the UX designer made something out of those drawings that was beautiful in Figma, right? Which is a popular program. And now we have a Figma that looks like a legit app blueprint. And then from there, we took our Figma and we took our drawings, which I guess we didn't really need, and our Word document. And then we gave it to a technology consultant. And then we asked them, okay, how do you suggest we maybe go about building this app if we wanted to? And then they told us everything and had a whole call with us to explain, like, okay, you want your backend to be this, you want to use MongoDB, you want to use this type of architecture. And he gave us it all in a nice PDF, right? And so we're like, okay, sick. Now we've got and again, at this point, man, we spent $120, nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so now we've got all this stuff and information, and now it's just like, okay, who can build this for us? And again, this was before ChatGPT was out there, and so we would just go and message all these different developers or these different developer agencies and ask them, hey, here is what we're trying to build. This is the tech stack that we would like, which we got from our tech consultant. And then it's like, can you please provide us with a quote? And then mention that you're speaking with other people too, so they know that they can't just be like, oh, you just want me. I'm going to charge you 100 grand, you know?
Yeah.
And then you go around and you get all of your different quotes from everybody. And then you look at their history and you see who you think might be trustworthy and that you could do well with. And then from there, the last big thing is you want to make sure that, let's just say you agree on $5,000 to build the whole minimum viable product for you. Do not just give them the $5,000. You, to protect yourself, what you do, because again, you don't usually with people in general, you don't know until you try to work with them, right? And
Yeah.
so what we did was we broke it up into milestones. And then it's like, okay, well, after this milestone and this piece is finished, the login screen, boom, you get your first payment. After this second piece, and then you just do it that way to de-risk it. Because then if they suck at milestone number one, you've only lost a little bit of money. You have to pay them, but you've only lost a little bit of money. And
Yeah.
so the thing is, if you look at the skill sets that Nathan and I are providing in that situation, drawing on paper and writing a Word document, and then just bringing it to those different freelancers to help you along the way, you know? And then from there, the next step would have just been find a group of people who can beta test it for you that you can easily get into the network. Like, for example, for me, at the time, my younger sister was still in a sorority at University of Texas, and so we were thinking we would just bring the app to her sorority exclusively, let them use it for a few months, get feedback from them, have them be our beta testers, and then whether or not they actually like it or use it, um, decide what to do next.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I've never heard of the kind of the process to making an app. But that was
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah,
And I mean, with I mean apps, there's definitely like so many things that you can kind of do, and
yeah,
so many different avenues that you can try to go down.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, yeah. So going back to like that question about where you feel someone should start, right? Do you
Mhm.
feel like there's like a certain because one thing I want to talk about as well is like I feel like a lot of people get stuck in that trap of like just watching content of like, oh,
Yeah,
like this is the business model to do in 2024, and then this is what you have to do, and then they watch the video, they're like, oh, that's super cool, super cool. They have like an hour of work, and then they're like, I don't feel like doing that, or like this doesn't work, or like what I mean.
yeah.
And it's like I feel like a lot of people fall into that trap. How do you feel like you kind of avoid something like that, right? Where it's like you're not really dedicating yourself to it.
Well, I guess it's a question also of, why do you think that person in that example isn't dedicating themselves to it?
Yeah. I mean, it obviously depends a lot on the factors that they have around them, right? And
Yeah,
also like if they don't truly like it could just be like a work thing. Like I don't really want to work and actually develop that skill set, actually want to do that, right? Which
yeah,
I mean, me personally, I've noticed it like you like I get messages from people like I said like oh I want to do this and it's like yeah look here watch these like 10 videos on like what this is what this is what this is and then go try this out right and then I like don't hear back from them like ever and I'm like okay well
yeah,
there goes like 15 minutes of my time of like just putting everything out for them but that's happened
yeah.
multiple times for me um
Dang. and that's the thing, man, is a lot of people will want what you have, but they will not be willing to pay the price that you did to get it, or they won't want that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, there are a lot of people that were like, oh, okay, this isn't super easy, you know?
Yeah.
As an example, my friend was who, you know, he has a more corporate job, but he's also wants to get in the entrepreneurial game and has always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so he started
Ah,
a Shopify store online and
sorry.
he tried to do, now you're good.
My camera does not want to stay still. I'll
Yeah.
try.
Um,
All right. A little bit
um,
better.
so he thought that he had a really cool idea for a drop shipping apparel company. And a good way to market it. And so he went for it. And then, you know, in the end, he got it all set up and his, you know, pretty like minimum viable product storefront, started running ads to it. And then it wasn't just like everybody throwing money at him and it raining cash like he had envisioned, right?
Yeah.
And so ultimately, that just, he just kind of left it behind and that just fizzled out, right?
Yeah.
Where the thing is, I don't think he was actually very into that. I think he was just into the idea of being entrepreneurial, having something and making some money, you know?
Mm.
And so I think, but then when it got hard, or it wasn't, he found out for himself that it's not so easy, you know, that he would have to work at it a lot to figure out different traffic sources, messaging, conversion rate optimization. It takes time, right? And I think he wasn't willing to do that for it, right? Whereas what I think he should have done is he's developed this whole he's developed this whole skill set within his industry. And if he wants to be entrepreneurial, make money, like leverage your existing skills and see how you can use it to serve you in an entrepreneurial capacity through that, right? And so I guess that hopefully can get some kids through that paralysis is you have to find out things that you're willing to go through hard times with, you know? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
and the thing is like especially a lot of times with content, right? Like you see that upside, but you don't see the downside, right? And
correct.
content creators do a great job of doing that of like, oh yeah, look, be I mean, what's an example of like the latest one, like growth operating, right? Oh, you only have to put together like a
Yeah.
school community, right? Like I don't know if you've heard of like growth
I've
operating,
heard
but
of
it's
school,
like
yeah.
yeah, and like you put together like a school group or a Discord community. It takes you like, an hour to put it together and then you just go message all these creators and like find the people and it's like is that really realistic, right? Like do you really think someone's going to pay you a couple $1,000s to put together like a school community that took you an hour to put together,
Yeah.
right? Right? And then
If it was that easy, everybody would do it, right?
exactly. And it's not only like they do such a great job of looking at the upside of things, but you don't see the, thousands of DMs you might have to send, the sales calls that you're just gonna do horrendous on because you've never done it before, right? Like all this stuff that goes into it, and it's probably gonna take you like, you know, months of effort of work to get it actually running. But then, when you do get past that hump, you're like, okay, wait, now like I know what I'm doing. Like it's a little bit easier. It's
Yeah.
not as hard to get through everything, right? Which I feel like was that like an experience that you had to go through of like I had this tough time and then like now I'm kind of like rolling a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been, there's definitely been challenging times, right? But I guess I've always had my overarching goals that have driven me. And so, like, I think about a Tony Robbins quote that in order to change, the pain of staying the same must be more than the pain of changing, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, as an example, I don't have a six pack. Would I like one if somebody could just give one to me? Like, sure, cool, right? But if I did want to get a six pack, I would have to go way harder on abs at the gym, and I would have to get my percent body fat down quite a lot, right? Even though I consider myself pretty healthy as it is. And so, but I'm
Yeah.
not willing to. I guess at this time of my life, I'm not willing to do all of that because I don't want it enough, right? My pain of my current situation is not enough to get me over that pain of what it sounds like to change, right? Maybe I sound like a schlub saying this, but this
Yeah.
is a general framework to look at it through, right? Where you have to decide if it is worth um, going forward with. And so maybe for some people, you know what, like it's just gonna it's not as easy as you maybe thought it was. And for you, you don't like that's fine. You didn't want it that badly. You're like, it'd be nice to have a six pack, but I don't really want a six pack, which is in this case a business, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't have to have one, you know?
Yeah.
Find out what you do want, what you are willing to get it.
Yeah, and like going like just another quote that came to mind while you were saying that is this one's like one of my favorite quotes is the magic you want is in the work you're always avoiding.
Yeah.
And to me that one like hits like a little bit because I always think of that like especially like just even with little things like school, right? I I want to have the good grade in the class, right? But there's like that one assignment or that one thing where you're like just really don't want to do this, right? Or like with
Yeah.
business, it's like it's the same thing. Like there's always like that one thing, like yeah, like I'll do like for me like cold calls, right? Like I'll do like as many cold calls as you want me to do. Like that's fun. Like I like that, and it's like maybe it's not like fun, but I'm good at it. So it's like when you're good at something, I feel like it's a little bit easier to do.
Yeah.
And it's like I want to do that, and like, but I have to like whatever the other thing is that I don't want to do, right? Like I have to um have that tough call with a guy on the team or like whatever it is that you don't want to do, like that's kind of what you have to do to get over the hump. And
Yeah.
especially in business, like that's definitely something that if you want to be an entrepreneur, I feel like that's one of the biggest that quote right there kind of exemplifies like what it means to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
For
There's
me at
like
least.
there's incredibly not sexy stuff that, you do every day.
Yeah, yeah. And there but the other thing is like there is amazing stuff that you do every day, right?
Yes, there
Like
is. Absolutely.
so it's like what do you want to do, right? Like it's kind of a mix of both. And I had a thought in my head and I just lost it. Ah, dang it. But
Couldn't have been that
I was
important.
yeah. Um but yeah, no, I think that as an entrepreneur, which oh, that's what it was. A lot of times like the first step maybe isn't to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that like for me personally, like I've started to wrap my head around, right? Because I've started my own business, right? Like I've tried it. It's like, okay, that didn't really work. Oh, okay, now like now I've had this other thing, like I tried it, didn't really work that well, right? So I'm like thinking like, okay, what's the best thing that I could do at 17 years old to build the skill set so that one day I can be an entrepreneur and I can run the whole business and create an asset that kind of compounds on itself, right?
Exactly.
It's building that skill set. It's maybe not, I guess, building the whole business and having to put out fires and having to do all this stuff that comes with the business, right? Like leading a team, whatever it is that there's tons of stuff that comes with being an entrepreneur instead of just honing in on that like skill, right? So maybe you come into you can just be like an appointment setter or a closer or like for you it would be like the marketing side of things, like you just do the marketing, you don't have to worry about doing that thing, which is like kind of your role at the obviously like we were saying like you have more responsibility, but that was kind of your main role at that startup, right? So it's like kind of doing that before getting into like where you are now, that stage of like I have my own business now, like I take control of everything, right? And I'm running it how I see fit, right?
True.
And I mean, I guess what are your thoughts on kind of that sort of mentality about going about it?
Yeah. I mean, in general, man, I'm such a fan of the idea of just you don't have to, again, you don't have to become an entrepreneur overnight. Just do a little something, right? Like find that first person that you think you can help or would like to try to help, and then you will learn so much through that process, right? And then that can, as you're saying, accrue your skill sets that you can later on become a more full stack entrepreneur, right? That
Mhm.
has more skills to bring to the table. But you also don't necessarily need to have a full skill stack, in my opinion. Like, you could also, and what a lot of people do is, let's just say that this guy is a smart dude and he's primarily just a coder, and that's his skill. Cool, and then he'll partner with a digital marketing guy, and then they'll partner with maybe somebody who understands finance well if it's relevant to what they're trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? And so you can also partner with people who have complementary skill sets to start something, right? So it doesn't have to be I'm the one that knows everything. It can also be, and what can often be even more successful is finding people who complement you, and not just in hard skills, but in soft skills, right? Like as an example, if you are great with people and you're the one that can talk, make new relationships, and perhaps bring in a new business, beautiful. That'll be
That's a skill all in itself, right?
that's a skill, right? Be a people person. That's huge, right? Thumbs up from
Yeah,
Russell.
thumbs up.
But then you've got maybe the coder person who stereotypically is going to be a bit more of an introvert. What they're doing is super important too, right? Building out the actual software that's going to be used, right? So you can also assemble a team instead of just taking everything by yourself, right?
And I saw a video the other day, and I kind of remembered it now, and like kind of the way that I was talking about it, um, was basically the video is kind of going around like it's like in America we kind of have this idea of like very individualized, very, you start on your own. You go do this, you do what you want, follow
Yeah.
your passion, you know. And then it's like if you really want to be successful, the best way to be successful is building a team and having a group of people that you go together with that your skill sets complement each other. And
Yeah.
it's
And you're
like
all
that's
aligned, right?
huh?
And
What
you'll
was
also
that?
be aligned, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like if you have a group of people with the same goal, I mean, there's barely anything stopping you if y'all's, skill sets complement each other, right? Even if they don't,
Yeah.
right? Like, three guys who are smart enough, like, okay, you learn sales, I learned the back end, you learn that, right? Boom. Now
Yeah.
we have this whole business, we have this whole thing working, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like in America, especially, like that's something that a lot of people like overlook. Like they feel like, oh, I have to do it all myself. And like obviously, like me personally, like I'm doing a lot of the stuff myself right now, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, I'd
So,
love to work in a team, right? And I'd love to have like a partner or a group of people who I can be like, oh, like look, let's do this together, right? But
mhm.
for right now, like I just want to build out that skill set, and then okay, now I know this guy from this podcast, or now I know this guy from here, and then that's how you build that team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to go over? I know we've been going for I think close to an hour now.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
yeah. Um, so is there anything that you wanted to talk about or leave the viewers with a message?
I guess maybe that there is no right path in life. You can go down a gazillion different paths in life, right? And I think it's just a matter of defining for yourself, what do I want? You know, like because we're talking about how in our very biased opinions, entrepreneurship is the coolest thing ever. You know what I mean? But like
Obviously.
yeah, right. And so that's our opinion, right? But then there are a lot of people who are like, well, I would actually rather go and have a very financially secure job at this company because I love the culture there and it's comfortable and happy and nice. And I'm going to grow there, right? And I want to focus on my family and I want to have that type of a life, right? Like, if that's the life that
That's
you want, like,
that's
that's beautiful,
amazing. That's great.
like,
Yeah.
good for you. Go live that life. And so I don't want our conversation to seem like you have to be X, Y, or Z, right? Because only you can define really what it is that'll make you happy and then go for it. And I think the whole point of our conversation that we've had today that we're sharing with everybody is that if you do want the same things that Alex and I seem to, this is some of the things that we've seen and experienced, and I hope that it serves you.
Mhm.
But if it's not what you want, and this was just for entertainment, I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And that whatever path you choose is fantastic. And there's no blanket, everyone should do X or Y. It's just about figuring out what is the right move for you and leaning into your relationships with people that you trust to figure that out. Because I know that I've had so many times in my life where I've felt like lost. Where, like, there was a time where I didn't know where I was going when I was at the one job, right? And I felt lost, and I was like, maybe I just go and do real estate. Like maybe I can do real estate, right? But then, which was looking back, a silly idea to like try to just completely shift industries, right?
Yeah.
And I had my close friends who I trust a lot talk me down and be like, you're just in a tough patch this month, and you know what I mean? You're gonna be all right. Just keep going. And then this was not when I was working on my own company, but still. And so leaning into those relationships and keeping people who you value their opinion and trust around you has just been so valuable in my life, not just professionally, but personally as well. And make sure you cherish those relationships and always give back to them the same attention, care, and love that they give you.
Yeah. Yeah, and like one thing that I want to point out with that last message is like this is all directed towards people who want to be entrepreneurs, right? Who do like have the same like-minded goals as us, right? Because I don't want to be talking to someone who doesn't want that. Like this is kind of shifted towards that conversation. I like to think that that's what my audience is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not 100% certain yet, but I'm pretty sure that's what my audience is people who want to do that, right?
Yeah. There's also a segment of people who just like having a little side hustle. Like we had a teacher, Mr. O'Neill, and he married another teacher, Miss Lupovich, which we loved. And then, they're full-time teachers and they also were into jam. So they had another side hustle of they would sell jam that they make at the farmer's market. Like,
Interesting.
cool. And so there's
Yeah.
also that segment of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a good note to end off the podcast. All I mean, do you want me to put any of your info in the description of the video for this Instagram or something?
Um, yeah, I'm actually gonna start a new social media channel soon. So maybe we can put that one in there.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll put that one in. That'll be in the description of the video, guys. So you
Yeah.
guys can go check that out.
And just a
And
quick plug of what it's going to be. Basically, through working on all of these different studies, I've seen how people don't realize that these are such amazing opportunities. Like for one thing, if you're struggling with a certain health condition, you may get access to a cutting edge treatment, right? Or for these surgical studies, you can get surgeries that are quite expensive done for you by a top doctor or an amazing doctor at no cost to you. You don't have to have health insurance, and then you even get paid for your time. So these are amazing opportunities that I want to share more organically to an audience so everybody can become aware of things like that or just other cool stuff similar to it that's going on.
yeah. All right. Well, all that info will be in the description, and I think I'll end it off there. All right. Thank you guys, and see you guys in the next one.
Thanks.